such extent to 2 days of talkings in so many issues and fields. But we thought that it would be nice to have at least like very short conversation with the key issues, and Dieter and Anna was so nice that they agreed to be the speakers at this last session. So thank you so much once again. The reason that they were asked is because they have like some connections with organizers. So that's why they are on the list of this last session. But everyone who has something interesting in mind are totally welcome to share it with us. Actually, I have only one question, and like very personal to both of you, Dieter and Anna. What will be your key takeaways from these 2 days? I don't know if you were for the whole days taking part in the sessions, but you were super active. So what will stay in your mind? And it could be like surprise, it could be some concerns, maybe something was missing or wrong. That will be also interesting to hear from you. Anything you think it will be valuable to share with others, it will be super welcome here. Maybe we can start with Anna, okay? No?
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for staying with us. We did not prepare those questions, so this comes like a surprise, right? I take away a lot of questions, which I have the feeling that they will bring my reflection on the early socialist cooperative experiences further. First question is this maybe a question related to what Bartek asked us to do in the first panel? Because at the beginning, he asked us to establish something like a genealogy of cooperativism. I do not know, Bartek, if you meant it in the Foucauldian sense, genealogy of the present or something like that. But actually, we did not do it. And this is maybe a task for the whole conference. But nevertheless, it occurred to me that there are always times of moments of crisis or historical constellations, which something like, I don't know, maybe are very proper to this alternative life settings or something like that. If you think at the 1840s, the period I was talking about, then the end of the 19th century, then the 70s, or today's crisis, Bartek and Aleksandra wrote about it in the call for papers. So this is really a question that is staying with me when I leave this conference. What is the reason for this cooperative module or this alternative life setting, these social experiments or laboratory experiments or whatever you might call this? When do they appear? Why do they appear? Is there a genealogy, or what are the similarities? What are the big differences? So this is maybe the first questions that I would like to put into this discussion.
Okay. Now, I took the rather Americanized presentation with the film, which I considered a bit of hot air, to be frank, to take down some notes on what I have learned. And there is quite a lot. First of all, I'm very glad that you organized the conference, and I'm even gladder that you forced me to stay through the whole conference. Because I just don't like Zoom conferences, to be quite frank. But okay, the first point is, and Anna made the point already, it's learning from history, of course, and learning from history and crisis. And there is additionally, I think there were some side aspects that I only learned through reading the abstracts of papers I have missed, which is the whole discussion of the third way, which of course makes interesting associations, third ways, avoiding both the radicalism of the Marxist and proletarian revolution and the radicalism of the real existing capitalism. but also these third ways always have a danger of getting into different issues, such as nationalism, such as even right-wing associations and so on, and corporations are not completely immune or innocent against those. So that was like for the history. I always love to listen to some positions that make cooperative movements today, which is always something inspiring, something to learn. And of course, it was very strong to talk about cooperation in specific situations, although, of course, the concept of cooperation and cooperative movements and so on gets looser and looser the closer we are at these examples. Another strength of the conference, I thought, was to use the concept of commoning and of cooperating as an analytical tool to look at different situations. And I thought the very last presentation was a nice example, and I could easily find or the last session for that, I could easily find more examples, but I lost all the names because my head is brimming after 2 days of cooperative movement and cooperation. So in this conference, we had stricter and looser applications of the concepts of cooperation and commoning. And what I take away as a learning, I think cooperative movement or cooperation and commoning are no solutions, but since there is no big solution, they are part to something or part of a picture that is always worthy looking at as it accompanies the more or less crisis-driven presence, or if we look in the past, the situations there. So lots of practical approaches. Thank you very much for what has happened and what we could listen to. It was the specter of the discussion on cooperation and commoning was well presented.
Super, thank you so much. I didn't think that I can ask you about the questions, so thank you, Anne, because that is brilliant. The questions as a takeaway is something really opening and revealing. So do you have any other questions in your list to share with us, or we should stay with this first one about genealogy?
Actually, I would have one second question, but maybe we should leave the floor to the others. What would you think, Aleksandra?
Yes, of course. I'm always suspecting those people who has camera on that they want to say something so sharp.
No, it's just...
Any thoughts you're having after these intense 2 days will be super valuable. And Bartek, Ola, you can also join the conversation
Yes.
as the main organizers.
I think that
Okay.
that what was for me the most interesting and general thing on this conference, it was then an attempt to describe how some local, some particular specific and so on projects of mutual aid, of cooperative, of giving also the subjectivity or yes, or the social self to some people, and not only people, can be useful for making patterns and models to universalize and to recreate our environment in the general sense. And I think that in my mind, the Marcelo Zwieta presentation is very inspirable, yes, because he describes us the very concrete social and economical situation of crisis, and the possible remedy for that crisis, which can be which can be something more than only a moment in the history of Argentina and the struggles between the owners and the workers, and this classical Marxian situation, but it could be something which will be change and transform the context in a permanent sense, because those recuperadas, yes, this cooperatives are now in Argentina a new form of economical enterprises, because in Argentina and in Latin America it was not this kind of form of work, because those cooperatives are not typical what we are calling in Poland spółdzielnia pracy, or workers cooperative, but the specific special skill of those workers was building the occupational organization and the strategy of occupation, which could be a good moment to reinvent their social position and reinvent also the social order around them. And because of that, I think that the most interesting thing in this context and in many more, for example, in also in historical sense, which was described, for example, by Anne, or in very contemporary situations like those described by Claudia Fert or Doron Timor in their papers. The most powerful moment of cooperation is to give a new experience for cooperate entities, to give a to create a collective experience of being political subjects, something like in the title of Victor Mazet's book about workers' revolution from 1905, the plebeian plebeian political experience and the recreation of public sphere. Yeah, and I think that the most interesting thing for me in those many social and economical processes is, and the cases which we describe here is not only their local and particular mutual help sense, but especially building a new experience of being political subject. And what was missing, in my opinion, in our discussions, it is only my opinion, as I said, was a problem of climate change, a problem of with which I started this conference, which was only marginal in our discussions, because I think that now our political experience is very close to our global and universal problem, which is also climate change. And I think that this experience will be something very different to those problems which I called social question in 19th century.
I'm a facilitator. I have to interrupt you. Because
okay.
you dominate the discussion. We have only 15 minutes left.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And I totally share your opinion, because I'm doing climate issues. So I totally understand that we should work on this area intensively. And my session was interesting because this one speaker was talking super interesting examples from Indian energetic cooperatives, but we need more of such examples in the future. I would love to ask any other people if you have any thoughts or insights to wrap up with us. I'm looking at Shaun. I'm looking at Ola Bilevich. Anne is smiling. Shaun, do you want to add something?
Yes, Shaun.
Well, it was just kind of some thoughts I had listening to Dieter and before. We were on the same panel, so I guess maybe I'm connected to them brain-wise. But I wonder how many of these crises and these kind of cooperative experiments that come out of them, there's kind of, and I'm thinking a bit about my time period, but also about Anne and Dieter's as well, and you know, in the contemporary time period, how much there's kind of like a looking to the future, but also looking to the past for some of the solutions to the future. And I know that in my time period, there's all these kind of inspirations for the previous agricultural or rural living that we had, where we had more harmony with nature, and want to bring that back at the same time as making things better for the future. And I think that also plays into what Dieter said about kind of the right sometimes co-opting these ideas. And I know that some of the ideas that of cooperation that came up in my time period also appealed quite nicely to fascists. A lot of fascists actually like Kropotkin's work, which is quite a weird thing, doesn't fit very nicely, but they also loved the old agricultural English life and thought that could be used to build a different future to how most of us probably feel. But yeah, just the past and the future, that kind of relationship, I think is quite interesting.
Thank you so much. Dieter, I saw your hand rise. Do you want to add?
I just, since you interrupted Bartholomew, I just want to carry on with one idea he had, and this one idea is that the time of crises are the big time of cooperation, and a crisis is characterized generally by there is a problem, but there is no solution. And of course, this is exactly the case with a climate crisis, for example. There is no solution, and I think cooperation, even these very small experiments and so on, they are kind of laboratories in which solutions are looked for, and for this reason, it is worthy looking into that. Although now looking back or looking to the current experience of the economic crisis, like in Latin America, in Argentina in particular, I think those laboratories do not or did never have the potential to become mainstream economic institutions, which doesn't mean they aren't important and they aren't worthy looking at, but the chance that they become mainstream institutions, I think, is rather limited, which doesn't mean that they are not important for that.
Mm-hmm. But don't we need some patterns to bring in cooperation as a model to this global context? Because our planet is now very very small place, and we have many problems which are not only problems of Europe or Asia, but those things are, I think that the most things which are the most problematic now, for example, COVID-19, are probably we can only fix them only by the cooperation in much wider sense, yeah. And I'm thinking not about only cooperatives in this old-fashioned sense, but cooperativism as a new paradigm for our thinking. Maybe it is something too much for us today, but I think that it will be not our choice, but our necessity. Because this cooperation, in my sense, it is especially resignation of many of our ideas and the paradigms which was so strong in the last decades. For example, growth, yeah, and thinking in this what? Sorry. I'm very tired. Yeah, for example, growth. Yeah, and this is my way of thinking. Not thinking that we will build a kind of cooperative republic. Yeah, in this old-fashioned sense.
Once again, I will interrupt you because we have one important question from
Once again,
Jazeen.
sorry.
And she's asking us about some recommendations in literature. So I would love Dieter and Aleksandra and Bartłomiej to think on that. Maybe you can share some ideas for her. Thank you, Ola, because you've already answered. And Philip was also having some questions or insights. I don't know. So Philip, the floor is.
Thank you very much. I would like to follow some remarks that Bartek made in his previous entry. And I guess that going back to the presentation of Marcelo Vieta about Argentinian cooperative is very interesting, because it's always nice to hear that cooperativism as an idea that compete at market of ideas is prevailing somewhere in the world. It is always nice to hear that. And Argentina case, as well as other, for example, from Europe, when we look at the agricultural cooperatives, those cases made me think that there is also, apart from idea and ideological part of cooperativism, there is also one very crucial element of cooperativism, which is space. And we can see space as something that has double meaning. The first, we can see a space of for cooperatives as a place for social interaction and let's say integration. And the second meaning is that that kind of space can be a place perceived as an economical asset that is also a cornerstone for seeing cooperatives as a place for entrepreneurship. And that second meaning, place as an economical asset, is not only just a pure economical thing. It has also embedded very important political issue of condition of that space. And that brings us back to the issue of climate change, for example, because if we look at the agricultural cooperatives, the issue of climate changes is very crucial one for them. And if we see agricultural cooperatives as one element of the whole chain of cooperatives, for example, later on a consumer cooperative, there is also a question of the quality and the, let's say, biological imprint of the cooperative production as well. So I guess there is perhaps something that stays for the next conference, perhaps in next year, to focus more on that, on those topics related to climate, in terms of part of new agenda for cooperatives in future.
Super, thank you for that insight. That will be useful for me as well. Dieter, I saw your hands once again.
Okay, I just wanted to make one point. I said the cooperative movement was in a minority position most of the time, and Philip has now mentioned the other word, the unword, so to speak, which is market. I think in discussing cooperation, we should not fall into the old Marxist trap of blaming the market for capitalism. Market is a much older institution than capitalism. Only before capitalism, markets were embedded in society, which made a big difference. And maybe even discussing the climate change, it would help if we think of the potential that is within embedding markets into the political realm, into something that can be regulated and regained by societies, because markets are strong institutions to regulate distribution and so on and so forth. So I think, this opposition here is the good cooperation world and there's the bad market world, should not even be an undertone of the discussion on the potential of corporations or on policies about climate change. This, since I'm much more interested in climate change than in the cooperative movement at the moment, I just have to make this point on where policies have a chance to have an impact.
Yes, I'm strongly agreed with you, and we should give this opposition rather not markets and the cooperation, then maybe these social embedded forms of being together. In Deleuze and Guattari dictionary, it will be immanent forms of being together, immanent to itself. Maybe it will be better. Not immanent to some kind of in the face of some kind of transcendation, and those which are transcendent. And in this case, this transcendence is a domain of state and a captured market, captured or axiomated, oh sorry, it's too difficult. Axiomated market, yes, and this is for them, in one word, this is capitalism. Yeah, this assemblage of market and the state, yes, we should think difficulty.
Aleksandra wanted to add something at the end, and I think that Annie, your second question can be like a coda for our conversation. Aleksandra, please.
Yes, I have such a thought while listening to all those presentations, that the positive thing about cooperativism is that it's still alive. There are a lot of initiatives, but I wonder if they really form something like a movement. Professor Haselbach also talked about the cooperative movement, but I wonder whether the movement exists, and what we can learn from the history of cooperativism is that the cooperative ideology was very important in mobilizing people to join the movement. This ideology was so important that it was even described as a kind of a religion. For example, a Russian theoretician of cooperativism, Vahan Totomyans, talked about the mystics of cooperation. So cooperation was almost mystical. And do we have such an ideology right now? I am not sure if there is anything that links those initiatives in a strong way, but maybe I am too pessimistic. So I would be happy to hear your comments.
Anyone to make some optimistic remarks on that? Anna, I see your face. You can make an optimistic remark.
No, I can't. My impression, I share Aleksandra's impression. Maybe should somebody else answer. But what I can say is that for the 19th century, it is a real religion. It is a scientific project and a religious project at the same time, and it's really a mindset that a lot of people were sharing. So, but yeah, for today, I don't know.
I hope that this 19th century view to the relationship between society, cooperation, and the science, which it is possible that in our time those three will be much closer, because this old paradigm of thinking about them about many other in many other spheres was that those areas was outside one to the other. And I think that in our times, science is in our houses, and maybe cooperation will be, like I said, not our choice but our necessity, and it will be realization of 4 years ideas that grid can be a purpose to cooperate. And our very bad emotions and how to say, our disadvantages maybe in general could be a good starting point to reinvent our being together. But I think that maybe it will be possible only in this material barrier, which will be problem of climate, which we are seeing day by day, especially here, where in November we have about 10 degrees, yes, and without any without sun, yes, in general. I'm not sounds like Fourier. Why? This grid? No, it was almost. I will send you this.
I was joking.
Okay.
And Bartek, you know, Fourier, and this is really advantage of my cooperativists. They are very positive, and they were certain that they can gain the new social order from their experiment. There was no doubt that. So this is really a difference. So
I think that we should, in general, in the first step, we should be sad to be happy in the future. It is my point of view in general. I'm the sad revolutionary. Okay. Okay, I think that if Sean wants to give us some reflection.
I think, did Dieter have his hand up as well before?
Yes, I've noticed that. Dieter.
Sorry.
Well, just a very brief remark. On a positive note, which was the bleak picture of there is no movement. The characteristic of the cooperative movement is, of course, that it is not a movement that is united, but that it is something that produces lots of little solutions. And since we have no big solution for the crisis, I think this is a case for optimism. This is what I wanted to say.
Okay.
I think I was going to kind of say as well that I don't know so much about contemporary cooperatives, although I've learned a lot more in the last 48 hours. But anecdotally, it seems to me like kind of quite a disconnected movement of various kind of like but not as coherent ideologically, and not as like there isn't as much of a cooperative ideology, and more like loads of different examples of cooperative experiments in those different fields and areas. You know, like couch surfing and specific organizations, cinemas, etc., etc. I'm thinking of English examples I've seen. And I just wanted to add to something someone mentioned about religion and cooperation in the past. Maybe it was Anne. That oh no, I think it was Aleksandra. Sorry. That in the late 19th century, the most popular, like amongst people, cooperative theory of evolution was, I think, was probably Henry Drummond's theory, which was that God had imbued us with like a cooperative spirit, and that we were all cooperating with each other and had developed a society because God had made us that way. And it was an incredibly popular ideology. And I think that like that kind of, I don't know if that still resonates today, but I think that kind of religion and cooperation, they're all intertwined historically.
Okay, I think that
that could be a good ending for the conversation.
Yes, and only 6 minutes after
the time. It's not so bad, but I think that we should really be super grateful for all of you and all other participants who wasn't so tough to be with us for so long. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dieter. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Aleksandra. Thank you, Sean. And thank you, Bartek.
Thank
and
you,
Philip.
Paula. Thank you, all of you, and I hope that these discussions will be a good starting point in your not only thinking but practices. And I hope that we will meet maybe once again in the future. It was really great for us. Thank you once again.
I also thank you for these 2 interesting days. Thank you for all presentations. It was really a great time. So thanks a lot.